Myself and my wife Frankie, we spend all day every day working with independent cafes, pubs, restaurants up and down the UK, helping them make more profit in their business as de facto commercial directors on the commercial strategic side, helping them turn expensive hobbies into profitable businesses, right? So they can get rewarded for the amount of effort that they put in. One of the biggest things that we find is that in independent hospitality, there is a veil of secrecy. People often don't know what good looks like. They often don't know if they are performing to what they should be performing to. And there's a lot of ambiguity around how we make money and the types of things we need to do to make money. And so the point of this video is we're going to take some real world examples and we're going to show you a before and after of the business where it started and the business where it's at now and the steps they made along the way to get there. And so if you run an independent cafe, a pub, a restaurant, you're going to find a business that looks like you, and you're going to find tips and tricks that are going to help you fix the right things, because no matter what, no matter how hard it is, someone's been there before. And so that's what this series is about. It's about getting rid of that veil of secrecy and showing you some real numbers of real businesses that have got through the crap that we're facing in 2026. And so this example is going to be a specialty coffee and brunch restaurant. So specialty coffee, premium brunch, very consistent trading pattern in this business. No real peaks or troughs, very similar trading pattern across winter and summer, which I know is pretty unique in hospitality. But what isn't unique is the story of this owner. And so this was an owner who had a career in a different industry, always had a dream of opening a coffee shop and restaurant, hadn't got any prior hospitality experience, and so did what anyone in that situation would do and hired people with experience. So hired an experienced general manager, hired an experienced head chef, which is absolutely the right thing to do. But what nobody tells you when you make that decision as an owner in a new industry is GMs and head chefs are often only as good as the structure and the systems that you give them. Okay, so they need to know the rule book that they need to play by in order for them to be most effective. If not, they will just do as they see fit. And if there is no rule book agreed, it can turn out pretty ugly. So what we're going to do is run through this business and what we're looking at here is a P&L. So your management accounts, whether you get them annually, monthly, weekly, this is what we're looking at. And so this business had a net sales figure, so sales after VAT, of £436,000, at an operating profit, or sorry, I should say an operating loss of about £9,000, so minus 2% over a year. All right, and to use this owner's words, snake dancing around break even was the feeling they had. Some good months, some bad months, but no consistency in the business. So the first thing we do when we look at this is £436,000. Is that a lot of sales? Is that not enough sales? Do we need more sales? Because I can pretty much guarantee 8 out of 10 independent owners, maybe even 10 out of 10, the thing that they think will cure all their troubles is we just need more people through the door, we just need more sales through the till, and everything will be fine. It's not always the case. And we like to there's a quick and simple test to know if you fit into the category of needing more sales or if other things need to be fixed. And so what we need to look at is, for this business, how much are they paying in rent? Because that will tell you a lot about, is the site generating enough income or as much income as it needs to cover that rent? So this site was paying peanuts in rent, okay, £12,000, which means that its rent as a percentage of net sales is 3%. Anywhere between 5 and 10%, we would generally, as a rule, say increasing sales is not your number one priority. This site is making about as enough revenue as the rent dictates. And so, yes, more sales is always nice, but it's not necessarily the number one priority for the business in terms of increasing how much profit comes out the bottom. Okay, and so we then look at the cost buckets. So our purchases, which is food and drink purchases, consumables, and which is our gross profit. So net sales minus purchases is our gross profit. For this business, GP was 65%. Now, that is not, depending on the type of business you are, dictates what kind of GP is good or not. And that's why we want to do these kind of reveals. For a specialty coffee and brunch spot, 65% is a bad GP because you are dealing with typically low cost and high value items, high perceived value items for the customer, okay? And so the differential between what it costs you to put it in the cup or on the plate and what you can charge for it should be very high. And so a GP of 72 to 75% is actually what will be good for this type of business. So we know it instantly, we've got potential here to improve the GP because it's currently at 65%. Now, why was it at 65%? Well, this owner had trusted the head chef to run all the commercials and run all the pricing themselves, okay? And any conversation they had with the chef was, yeah, that's been costed up and that's the price to hit 70 plus GP. Like, I've worked it out in my head, 70% plus GP is what it would be, okay? And so they couldn't fathom why it was so low. And the crux of it came down to the dish costs and the commercials lived in the chef's head. They were not on a piece of paper, they were not in a document, and so they couldn't be questioned, which was mistake number one. And because they couldn't be questioned, it was impossible for the owner to see that the chef was not using the correct calculations for GP. So what the chef was, he was not including VAT in his margin calculations. And so what he thought was hitting a 75% GP was never hitting it because he never took into account that we needed to add 20% more to that price to cover the VAT, the value added tax that went on top of it. Okay. And so that was mistake number one. And this is a common theme through here, trusting people in your team without having the proper systems in place and, the proper checks in place to make sure they're doing it correctly. We absolutely believe in trusting your team, but making sure that they have the systems and the structure to operate within, and that you, the owner, can ultimately check everything that happens in the business because that's your responsibility. The biggest cost bucket in the business is labor. And for this business, their labor was at 49% of net sales. So again, on the high side, there have been huge cost increases, minimum wage increases, everything that's gone on in hospitality. But still 49% is very high from a labor to sales ratio, okay? And a lot of this was down to the fact that, again, all of the trust was placed in the GM, and they were rotating based on what they felt was appropriate, not necessarily on what the needs of the business were, okay? And so there was no structure for forecasting, for budget setting, any of that. And because of that, it meant that there was no real recourse for the owner to talk to the GM and say, do we have too many people on today? Do we have too few people on today? There was no measuring stick for what was good and what was bad. And some months within this number got as high as 67, 68%, okay? They were crazy out of control. And so, again, similar story to the chef story, putting too much faith in your team and not giving them the structure was the downfall of why this business wasn't making profit. And then the other costs were at 18%. So again, this is just showing that the operating costs and the overheads of the business were relatively low. Okay. Anything under 20%, you'll be able to make really good profit in your business. Okay. And so 18% was really good. So it meant that where we were going to find the savings or the potential in the business was in the GP and in the labor. Okay. And so what this business turned into, and I'll go through it line by line, is a completely transformed business in terms of its cost base and its profitability. So net sales in this period actually declined slightly. It's been a really tough trading environment. It was their second year of business. Often you see a little bit of a softening after the kind of hype and woo-woo of the first year of opening, but broadly flat, which in the UK at the moment is pretty good. But it's a really interesting context to see that this business definitely didn't need more sales because they declined sales. And if we look at a headline, their profit went from -2% to +12%. So from -9,000 to +51,000, a £60,000 difference, despite declining sales by £13,000. Now, where was that difference made up? And it's in the two things that we talked about, okay? GP actually went from 65% to 73%. And that all started with getting the dish costings out of the chef's head and into a system. The menu reviewed against what was selling, what wasn't, and the actual GP of each of the dishes and where stuff wasn't meeting GP targets, looking at price increases, menu redesign, being ruthless when looking at suppliers and costings. And if you're a specialty coffee shop business, a lot of your costing go into the coffee that you're sourcing. And so if you're paying 21 to 22 pounds a kilo, I can absolutely guarantee you right now you can get a equivalent quality coffee for 15 to 16 pounds a kilo if you find the right supplier. And so this owner was a dog with a bone with that kind of thing, preserving quality, implementing structure, but making sure that the cost base and the prices were correct in order to deliver the GP. And it makes a massive, massive difference now. The big part and the big unlock for this business was its labor savings. And so this is one where a lot of people come to us and say, I'm in this situation. I've got 49% labor, but I don't know how to cut it without all the costs are increasing. I don't know how to cut it because service is going to go in the toilet. Okay. This business did it. And this business did it through a proper rigor around forecasting sales and understanding how much the business could afford to spend on labor. So this business targeted 40% labor cost. Okay, and they came in at 39%. It was an incredible execution of the plan because each week the owner and the GM had a shared language of here's how much sales we think we're going to do. Here's what we can afford to spend on labor. We build a rota based on what we can afford to spend. You don't go shopping in a supermarket or buying clothes without a budget in mind. You shouldn't be building your rota without a budget in mind and having a shopping budget. Okay. Now, again, this business achieves these results with minimum wage increases, with national insurance increases. Okay. And they did it through that proper planning, but not only the proper planning, they did it through getting an A team in place. And what that meant was fewer, better people doing the work. But it all started from having the budget and understanding how much they could spend to make those decisions. And almost £50,000 purely from labor savings. Okay. Incredible stuff when you get the right processes in place and execute against it weekly. These guys did a phenomenal job of that. The other costs in the business did see an increase from 18 to 22%. Part of that increase was paying for specialists like ourselves, but also business rates and things like that. The good thing about this is that specialist help was a one-time fee and it's helped 7x their profits. And that's a fee that they won't see in next year's accounts. But what they will see in next year's accounts is the continued execution on the GP, the continued budgeting and planning and execution on the labor costs. And so next year, the results compound even more. With sales increasing, all of this structure is in place. And so this business, despite losing £13,000 in sales, despite increasing their cost base by £15,000, their fixed cost base, okay, through investment, not cost, through investment, they managed to generate £60,000 more profit in the business, okay, which is huge weight off everyone's shoulders. And it is the kind of thing that is transformational within independent businesses, okay? Nobody gets into an independent business to love the numbers or because they're so into numbers and spreadsheets. But hopefully you can see from this video that when you look at it in a simplified manner and you understand exactly what needs to change, big changes are possible without having to add 1,000 more people through the door, 10,000 more people through the door. The money's in your business. You just need to stop it walking out the other side, which is what this business has done. And so if you struggle with focus or you struggle with any of where to start, and this all sounds good, we've got a free tool in the description. So just click on that. You answer 6 extremely short questions. It will take you literally 40 seconds and it will spit out for you an action plan on your GP, on your labor, on your numbers in your planning, and it will give you one thing to focus on next week. And so if you're sitting there and you're watching a YouTube video and you're like, God, I'd love £60,000 extra profit, use that tool. It's free. It's our gift to you. We've built it based on hundreds of hours of conversations with owners, just like this owner, who've seen real results. So it's our gift to you. Use it. And if you do use it, please reach out via Instagram, YouTube, whatever, carrier pigeon, and let us know how you got on.